go.
Life is going nowhere. Somebody help me. Life is going nowhere. Somebody help me. Yeah. It's a Bee Gees song, Staying Alive. It's the same song I used last week. We're still working on trying to get that to go. Dan Grider, Probable Cause. It is Monday, November 14, 2022. This is my weekly recap of the latest general aviation accidents and a few other things that have happened. I apologize, I did not get this one on the air last night, so we did a quick live video last night, Dylan and I, just to catch everybody up. Had like 1,100 people in there with us live in that live chat room with live video and live audio last night, so that was kind of fun. But it's my fault. I had to go ferry a DC3 on Sunday, and I'll give you the whole story on that. But before I do, I wanted to tell you that I have got hats. I don't have a lot, but I've got DTSB hats. They're not for sale. They're for free. And later in the video, I'm going to tell you how to get a free hat and a free AQP sticker for those who are qualified to get those. I don't want any money trading hands. If you're qualified and you follow the instructions and you do an AQP flight review, I want to send you a hat as my thank you for listening, following instructions, and trying to take extra effort to stay alive. It's on me. So that instruction on how to get a free hat later on. I don't have very many of them, so I don't anticipate that initially a whole bunch of people are going to flood my mailbox asking for a free hat. It's going to take you a little bit of effort to go out there and do an AQP flight review and get a certification, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about the DC3. This is a project called Mr. Douglas Society. It's an airplane that I've been very familiar with for many years. In my early days of skydiving, I jumped out of this airplane. This is Donald Douglas's personal airplane from a long time ago. It was actually owned by United, then Conrad Hilton of the Hilton Hotels, and then eventually in the late 70s, early 80s sometimes, a guy named Mark Borghorst bought it and he put it on the skydiving circuit. Mark owned and operated this airplane for probably 30 years until it became disabled in Tullahoma, Tennessee, 23 years ago. So this airplane has literally sat in the same spot in Tullahoma. These guys got a 501c3 together. They got donors, they got people, they got volunteers. It's an excellent organization. I'm going to put the website up here on the screen for you to see here. I want you to consider donating a little bit of money or something, especially if you're a skydiver. If you'd like to jump this airplane in the future, it's about to happen. They still need your support. Don't send it to me. Send it directly to them. This is a fine organization, and I appreciate you considering doing that. The entire process started in 2017 of restoring this thing. These guys have worked tirelessly out on the ramp in Tullahoma. Winter, summer, spring, fall. These guys have stayed on this airplane. So it's got new engines, new props, new everything, but it needed a ferry permit to get it down to DeLand. So the very last step before winter set in Tullahoma, we had to get the airplane out. I'm going to show you some video here of the takeoff. Here's us on takeoff. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. This will eventually be a full ride-along video. Here's our takeoff from the first sequence of the takeoff from Tullahoma.
We're going to use as much of this runway as possible on the overrun too.
Yep. We got to see 70 knots by the time we get to the FBO.
Oh, we'll have it way before then.
We'll be way before that. Your throttle friction where you like it?
Yeah, I like a fair amount. I've seen them slip. Let me see, I can't see the center line there. Okay, I got it.
All right, tail wheel's locked?
Yep. Low pressure and everything is good. Temperature is fine.
Everything's good.
Here we go.
129 Hotel is departing 36. Power set. Airspeed is alive. Forward on the yoke. Looking good. All pressures are good. Positive rate. I'm gonna put your gear up. Gear up.
At the very end of this video, I've got a really cool in-flight video segment. If you stay to the very end of the video, I'm going to show you what it's like. I'm going to give you a complete tour of the inside of the airplane that I shot while we're in cruise on the way down there yesterday. But the ferry permit came through yesterday morning. It became active at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. I don't know why, but they called last week and said, let's get this airplane out of there before anybody figures it out, and let's get it gone. So we did. We met. Dylan and I drove up there Saturday. We met with the crew and stayed up there and had dinner with them and everything. And then Sunday morning, very cold, but we went out to the airport and got everything prepared. We made one test flight lap around the pattern in the DC3 because our ferry permit allowed that. One local test flight to come back and shut down and check fluids, leaks, and everything. Worked perfect on the test flight, so we topped it off and took off like we had good common sense and pointed towards the land. Everything went fine. We got it down there, and I made it home last night. But I was on the road too much yesterday in order to get a video out. That's how come this one is out here tonight. So, in advance of that, now I want to talk about AQP. I'm a flight instructor. I've been a flight instructor for a long time. I actually went and took an AQP flight review, and this is the sign-off that I got. I'm going to read it to you here. This is the sign-off. Now, I created this, and I asked this CFI. This is not a buddy who did this as a favor to me. This is somebody that I showed them what I wanted them to do. My flight review became pass-fail. It was possible for me to fail a flight review based on my performance. If I had failed it, there wouldn't have been any paperwork, and he wouldn't have turned me into the feds or anything like that, but he would not have been able to sign this piece of paper. So here's what this piece of paper says that he gave to me. I certify that I've given Mr. Daniel W. Griner, the holder of pilot certificate number ATP 273, the ground and flight training in accordance with FAR 6156 and an annual AQP flight review. The specific scenarios unique to Dan's aircraft and typical flight that we covered in this AFR were AQP numbers such and such. This annual continuing qualification recertification included 1.0 hours ground instruction, 1.0 hours flight time, 4 takeoffs and landings at 6 Alpha 2. I certify that I have trained Mr. Griner to proficiency and have evaluated his continued airworthiness in each scenario and find him competent and qualified to continue to operate as a GA pilot in the National Airspace System. This continuing qualification recertification expires November 30, 2023. So it's a certification. We use the word certification, and it has an expiration. If this guy had signed me off and I had not been able to pass, that's fraud. He could not sign this unless he in good conscience actually flew with me, actually tested me, and actually evaluated me. If there was a maneuver in here that I was not up on, that would have been his time to say, Dan, this is not good, and I'm not going to sign your document because you can't do it. So the question is, did I pass? Debrief, Terry, number one, did I pass?
Yes, you did very well.
The big takeaway for me here is that you've combined into this flight review, you've combined ACS and AQP. We did some things in here that you threw in, like short and soft field takeoffs and landings. We easily got it completed in an hour, but I learned some things out there today by sitting left seat and having you instruct me. There's nothing wrong with me taking instruction from an instructor. We can combine AQP with ACS, and the huge takeaway, absolute best nugget of the day, you know what that was?
What's that?
ATC.
Yes, yes.
Did you see what happened out there?
Yeah, and I led into it with the fact that, you know, a lot of new instrument pilots get worried at this point and say, what am I going to do? I'm going to enter the clouds. Well, tell them you got a problem, and they'll respond.
Now, in the process of doing this AQP flight review, we ended up doing a scenario. Terry wanted to check and see what I would do in this scenario. So he briefed it. We're going to make a takeoff. Whatever scenario he gave me, he wanted me to play it out in real life. Do it as if it was really real. This scenario with ATC involved inadvertent VFR into IMC conditions, and he set me up into a position where I had made a takeoff and things were not good. And I tried to get some help with ATC, but I want you to listen. As I called ATC, I got the airplane up to a safe altitude, and then I was going to ask for help, but listen how busy ATC was.
Atlanta approach 6651 Whiskey.
6651 Whiskey, stand by. Number 86 Hotel, squawk 7250.
So after 2 or 3 of these where ATC says stand by, I'm still in evaluation mode. This CFI is wanting to know what I'm going to do next. Now it's up to me to use my wits to try to figure out a way. How can I get this ATC controller's attention here to help me? So here's what I did. Listen to this unfold here. I think this is absolutely classic, and I hope that you'll come away with a takeaway from this very specific situation as it unfolded in real time. Listen to this.
Once you're golf, crossing 80 at this time, clear ILS runway 21 left approach.
And this is where students or new IFR pilots have an issue with, they call ATC and they tell them to stand by. It's like, you know, how long do I stand by?
Atlanta approach 6651 Whiskey.
Stand by.
I have a problem.
Go ahead.
Just took off from Griffin, and more clouds out here than what I anticipated. I need some help getting back.
6651 Whiskey, squawk 0141.
0141.
So I shook hands with the controller. I said thank you. I let him know that everything's good. But did you hear how quickly we went from standby to he gave me instant help? And I want you to use that as a takeaway whenever you're talking to a controller. These people, especially these Atlanta controllers, I'm kind of biased. These guys are excellent. Really, nationwide, your approach controllers and center controllers are excellent. As soon as you give them the first hint that there's anything wrong, they're going to help you. They're probably going to get a supervisor involved, and they're going to help you any way that they can, but you have to let them know. Don't be willing to sit there and only take orders from them. Confess to them that you have a problem. And I hope this illustrated what that was about.
Radar contact 4 miles northwest of the Griffin Airport, and are you still VMC, sir?
Yes, sir, I am, and I'm in the clear, and I appreciate your help, sir. I just needed to do it for a demonstration purpose for a student here, and I'm sorry for the trouble, but the real squawk 1200, everything is good, and I appreciate your help.
61 Whiskey, roger, and squawk 3 fire, change 560 approved.
Nice job, good day.
So I did pass, and if you would like to get a free hat, I want you to you can email me and I'll give you this sign off. I want you to go and take at least an hour of ground, at least an hour of flight. I learned a lot on my ground school. My ground school actually lasted almost 2 hours. We went through a lot of stuff and went over some things and reviewed some things that I needed to review. In flight, we not only did AQP maneuvers, we did some ACS maneuvers that I hadn't done for a long time. We actually did a short and soft field takeoff and landing, which is fine. If you want a free hat, go out and volunteer for an annual flight review that uses this sign-off. Get an instructor to use the words I certify. Make this a pass-fail thing where if you don't perform, you don't get this. Now, on this AQP AFR that I just got done, I was required to do a spot landing. This guy chopped the engine and said, put it on the runway. I want you to know that it did not come out perfect. I ended up with a little bit more headwind. I pointed towards the runway, but I was planning on a little bit bigger left base than what I actually could afford. And by the time I got there, I saw that I was out of altitude and energy. I did make it with room to spare, but as I pointed towards the airport, my initial inkling to scoot out wide and take a little bit wider right base, all of a sudden I could tell I've got headwind. I'm pure headwind going into the headwind for this thing. And it worked, but I'm under the gun here. From the position that he chopped the power, I should have been easily able to make it to the runway. That's where the AQP flight review, if I had not made it to the runway, we would have gone back to the table and reviewed this, briefed it, and gone back out and tried it again for a second time. He's not going to sign this off if Dan can't do it. And I think that's fair. You're flying your family around. Take some extra effort. What does a flight review cost? Cost me a couple $100. Not a big deal. Go out, I learned something, and fly the airplane. Now let's do a quick review of last week's video. It was only on there 6 days. Staying Alive, the mostly featured the Barron crash in Atlanta, Georgia, the Max Cohen crash. It ended up with 89,000 views and about 1.2 million minutes watched. So it got a lot of traction, a lot of good comments on there, a lot of interaction, a lot of conversation, and I appreciate that. That's really what that video is designed to do. But last week's was also designed to talk about the most recent fatal accidents in general aviation, which it did. Let's go on and talk about this week's. And the last 7 days, specifically now because I'm a day late. And so let's talk about the last accidents in the last 9 days. And there's 7 of them. Only 5 of them were fatal. I'm going to talk about the other 2 because 2 of these are very important, even though that they did not turn out to be fatal. So let's go all the way back to 700 Yankee Zulu. This accident occurred on the 5th of November at 11:56 a.m. November 700 Yankee Zulu. It's an SR22 in California. Runaway trim. A guy named Andre Green, 46 years old, and he's in the traffic pattern. He's got a runaway trim. Let's listen to the cockpit audio on this. He's trying to tell the controller what his problem is.
My trim is activated by itself.
N6 Echo right down on approved runway 2 right for takeoff. Cessna Upland's making a right turn for the pattern.
I have an emergency option by trim. Flying green, N6 Echo right down when departure.
Just having a trim problem, you have a stuck mic on 125.7. So 96 Echo runway 2 right for takeoff. Yankee Zulu go around offset north side. Yankee Zulu go around. Yankee Zulu offset to the right.
I got it in.
Now, the correct answer is that he should have pulled the circuit breaker for this. Andre's main problem that caused this crash was he got distracted by the runaway trim. He was fighting the airplane. He never closed the throttle. His speed on final, trying to put the airplane down, was crazy high. It's because he still had a tremendous amount of throttle in there. He never closed the throttle. He hit hard, and Andre did live for a few minutes after the crash, but he died just a few minutes later, I think, en route to the hospital. Never close the throttle. So what is this AQP maneuver? This is absolutely a mishandled abnormal. This should not have been a big deal. He should have been able to handle this. He was a fairly low-time guy in this Cirrus. Our deepest respects and condolences to this family. He was a great guy. I looked at his Facebook and profile and everything like that. A wonderful family man and everything else. It's such a tragic loss to lose another guy to an accident that is so simple. Better training, better systems knowledge, and when you get distracted and you have an abnormal going on, you still have to fly the airplane, which is your right hand's on the throttle, your left hand's on the yoke. You have to be able to do this. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one is 809 Delta Mike. This is an E90 in Louisiana. The guy survived this. He is in a burn unit, and it's not good. It happened at 9:45 p.m. Here's his radar track of what he flew. Very low fog that evening, trying to get into Slidell, Louisiana. Non-stabilized approach. He finally drove it right straight into the ground. Went too low. This is AQP maneuver number 9. He is not deceased, but boy, he is not in good shape. And our prayers and well wishes. We are pulling for this guy. We hope he will pull out of this. The next one on the 9th of November, 9:34 a.m. November 234 Papa Mike, PA 46, which is Meridian in Nebraska. Stall spin. This guy got slow. This guy's name is Adam Helmerichs. He's aged 41, and this is a DMMS fatal. 2 guys died on this. Adam just became a private pilot. He just bought this airplane. Now he's in a turbine-powered, single-engine turbine-powered, and he's a brand-new instrument student. He let this thing get slow on the approach. This is lack of experience, he should not have been there. Somebody should have stopped him. The weather was bad. It was icy. It was low vis. It was low clouds. And here's a brand-new pilot. He should still be in a 172, not a turbine-powered single-engine airplane in the clouds with an instrument rating. It's ridiculous. This guy had more money than sense. His overabundance of money actually caused his death on this. It happens all the time. He wasn't a doctor, but that's what happened. This guy should never have been in a turbine-powered single-engine airplane. Let's take a look at the next one. This is November 234 Papa Mike. This is a PA 46. I'm sorry, this is November 7123 Kilo. This is a PA 18 in Alaska. This guy hit the power lines, hit buzzing the river. He was about 30 feet off the water, buzzing a river in Alaska. His name was Joshua Seagrave, age 46. This is a buzzing AQP number 5. The next one that we're going to talk about is this slide. That's Gonzales, Louisiana. Cirrus. I want to show you the radar track. This is an SR-22. This guy's going from Lafayette to Pensacola. He has a problem. He's pointed directly towards Pensacola when he has a problem. I don't know what the problem is. They're saying he was out of gas. Doesn't make much sense to me, but in any case, he got a radar vector and turned toward the nearest airport, which was Gonzales. He was at 7,000 feet. He could have easily glided down to Gonzales, no problem. He ended up just off, kind of on a left downwind for this runway, and he maneuvered and wasted all of his energy. He ended up short. At about 500 feet, he popped the parachute. This is bad planning. This is a guy that can't do a spot landing in a Cirrus. He lost the engine for some reason. I looked at the propeller. The propeller was not turning when the airplane touched down under parachute. He's going to be fine. Everything's good. This is another Cirrus driver that cannot turn left and land and maneuver the airplane to land on the numbers after a power plant failure. That should be a basic requirement for operating a Cirrus, and he could not do it. He's going to be fine. I have a real problem with these guys relying on a parachute. I think the parachute's a great idea, but these guys that can't fly the airplane, their basic airmanship is almost zero. They're relying on the parachute to save their life. This parachute came down very near a community college. Fortunately, didn't land on anybody or hurt anybody, but it sure could have, and I'm not a fan of this scenario. Whoever this guy was, I don't think you did a very good job. Your planning initially probably wasn't good, but doesn't matter. After the fact, when you had your engine failure, you should have been able to make this runway in Gonzales, Louisiana, no problem. Come on, Cirrus. We got to do better. Let's take a look at the next one. Okay, we're down to the Texas crash. I'm going to defer most of this to Juan Brown Blanco Lario. He and I have been on the phone just about all day on this. His video is going to come out in the very near future. I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth on this. I'm not very happy on this. Everybody gets an opinion. I do too. This is a scenario called Warbirds on Parade. This is a function unique to the CAF. CAF is Commemorative Air Force. They do this thing called Warbirds on Parade, which means they fly a left-hand circuit around the airport in a tight pattern, which is fine, about 1,000 feet, 500 to 1,000. Here's the briefing where this occurred. I can't tell who this guy is that's conducting the briefing, but here's the briefing for this. They want to put these airplanes on parade, which means they do a circular pattern around the airport, which is fine, except that now they've got fighters and bombers. What's the problem there? Huge mismatch in speed. They got fighters on the inside, and specifically you got an air boss here. I'm not sure who this air boss was, but he gave the instruction to the P63 guy. I got several people that actually heard it. Let's listen to this video clip. This air boss gave the instruction to the P63 to take the lead. I'm going to explain to you what that means in just a second. Here's that conversation.
Colburn was also listening to a radio call from the show coordinator on the ground, telling the pilot of the P-63 to overtake the bomber.
They were in the turn, and when the air boss said, you know, go ahead and take the lead, I thought, well, that's kind of rushing everything.
So take the lead. There shouldn't really be any formation flying, but they wanted to make a show pass with the P-63 and the P-51 escorting the B-17 right down the flight line. The show center there is that line that divides. That's the do not cross line. So basically what it does is it confines all the traffic. Every bit of the traffic gets crammed into this tiny little corridor because everybody wants to be as close to the line as they can without going over it. Now they're all at the same altitude. This P-63 picks up his instruction from the air boss to assume the lead, which means he's got to cram some power to it, tighten up his turn, and get in front of the B-17. When you're the lead guy, the B-17 would be flying off of you. That means he's got to be in front. That means he's coming from behind. That means he's got to get in front. He put power to it, and he went belly up to the B-17, which is a no-no. He's on the inside banking hard, and he went belly up to the B-17 on the inside of the turn. Every bit of it is formation stuff that you cannot do. The whole CAF Warbirds on Parade thing is an absolute atrocity. I've never understood how come these guys can do this and mix airplanes and mix speeds. Here's the graphic from the guy who's the CEO of CAF, and here's what he had to say about the briefing that morning. He published this before the crash. So that's Hank Coates, CEO, and his instruction there. I'm going to get beat up for making an opinion on that, but the guy in the P-63, I think, was only following the direct orders of the air boss. I've got a copy of the actual briefing. The briefing that morning did not include the specific information needed to keep those guys safe. It had everything but all the critical information on how not to run into the people and what they're going to do about mismatch in speed and who's flying off of who. This is not just a parade. They're actually making these little mini self-ground guided formations, 2 ships and 3 ships at the direction of the air boss as they come through show center. The whole thing doesn't make any sense to me, and I've never liked this thing. This was an accident waiting to happen, and it finally happened. It did happen. I am very sorry for the loss of life. I personally knew Len, a good guy. I typed him in the DC3 many years ago. I think he was the only one among the crew that I actually knew personally. But a horrific loss for everyone involved. I'm very sorry. I only make these comments not for views, clicks, or money. I don't sell any advertising. I only make these comments because it's the truth. I think we need to hear it. I think we need to not be doing these kind of things. CAF, if you're doing Warbirds in parade, left-hand traffic around the airport at 1,000 feet and mixing all these speeds and turning tightly, I think it's a recipe for disaster. I don't think we should be doing it. We'll have to wait and see what Juan Blanco has to say about this, but the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. All right, I got to get out of here. Remember, I got my hats. If you want to send me an email, dan@dangrider.com. I'll send you a logbook sticky. I expect you to actually go out and fly and conduct an AQP flight review. I want you to put your DMMS on your airspeed indicator. I want you to try it. I want you to take a pass-fail flight review. If you fail, just go back and get more training until you can pass it. Don't accept a certification until you can actually do those maneuvers and you're actually safe. I'm going to include the next section on here with the DC3 at the very end because it's kind of a long section, but if you're interested in what the DC3 looks like in flight, that'll be next. Don't forget my airborne animal rescue donation towards me. $1 or $2 would help me a lot, and donation towards the animal rescue effort in getting the DC3 stable and ready. We're very close now to getting the thing up and running. I've had so much time and effort on everybody else's airplanes, but we're real close, and I appreciate that. Airborne Animal Rescue, the whole thing is designed to help have my DC3 ready to ferry airplanes out of harm's way when the time comes. And going forward, that's going to be a really good thing to have totally ready to go. And I think you'll see that's going to be a fun thing to have done and have ready, up and ready to go to get these animals out of there. Got to get out of here for my tiny little itty-bitty fledgling YouTube channel. Staying alive. Dan Grider. Probable cause. We're in the cockpit, 9,500 feet. I've got a visitor in the right seat. This is my seat. Mark Borghorst, left seat. We're navigating off my Garmin 496. No transponder, no ADSB. Got a lot of stuff in the cockpit that's not working. So I'm going to give you a quick cockpit tour here and show you that this thing looks like. Here we are. Take a look at. There's the cockpit right there. There's where we are. There's the man and the legend right there. And of course, we are AQP certified. Let's go in back of the airplane. There's the cockpit door. Right there. So you go through this door like this. And then this airplane holds 30 jumpers. When it's configured for jumping, it's got these seats in here that you can actually walk around in here, which is pretty cool. Here's the seats that you sit in when you're a skydiver. You sit here in these bucket seats like this, get ready to go. These bench seats over here against the wall, they all pull out. Now check out the view out this thing. These are the picture windows. So you can see there's a lot of visibility. There's the tail back there. There's no way to jump out the door and hit the tail. There's all the stickers. thousands of people have made thousands of jumps out of this airplane. Here's the mural in the back of this airplane. This is what this airplane is really known for, is this mural in the back of the airplane. So it's a cool airplane. The history on this thing is that Donald Douglas himself owned this airplane. I think when it was built, it originally was in the probably United or American owned it, I'm not sure. This was built in 41, and then Conrad Hilton from the Hilton Hotels, those brothers owned it next, and then Donald Douglas bought it from the Hiltons, I believe is what happened. So Donald Douglas himself was in this airplane with his dogs many times. Some of this stuff that you see in here, this stuff here, this is still original from when Donald Douglas had this airplane as a personal transport. So, super historical airplane. I myself jumped out of this thing, I'm gonna say early 80s sometimes. Muskogee, Oklahoma, they used to have like 4 or 5 DC3s at Nationals in Muskogee. So this is my first experience on a DC3 myself, is when I jumped out of it. So I had probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 trips in a DC3 takeoffs, but I never landed in one. That was long before the days of me owning and flying and instructing in a DC3. So there's your tour. I'm going to go back up and get up in my seat. We've got a little bit of flying to do before we get down to DeLand. And this airplane is going to be in DeLand for the winter to get some more avionics and stuff done to it. I appreciate you supporting the Mr. Douglas Historical Society. I'm going to leave a web link and a page on the graphic right now to show you how to donate to this airplane and this project. This is a 501c3. It's a non-profit. These guys have done a tremendous amount of work to get this airplane airworthy and flying. It's on a ferry permit right now, but over the course of the winter, it's going to get done. You're going to be able to jump this thing. I'm going to jump this thing. I'm going to help get this thing going and get some cruise train. But then I'm going to jump this as well sometime in the summer of 2023, I hope. So it's a fantastic project. Please donate. Send your donations, large or small, whatever you want to. Send them directly to the Mr. Douglas DC3 Historical Society website. And I'll put that graphic up on there. Let's go back up in the cockpit and take a look and see where we're at. Isn't that cool? What a great view. Totally awesome. In the right seat here is Tom. Tom's been a big donor and a help, support, volunteer. He's also a skydiver with 3,500 jumps. Mark is also a skydiver. Mark got started skydiving in early 70s, I believe.